Colleagues, I think right now we are going to hear the interactive poster session. That is for now, that will be given from us, and the topic will be from the year that was to the year that come. I think Stefan will will help us with that. That will be from the collaborative learning communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. And thank you so much for that presentation from Professor Ramaguda. I think it's also laid what will follow in this dialogue session that we're expecting to have from the collaborative learning communities of HELTASA. I think a lot has been said also. So this is not an interactive poster session. That was an error on the program. It is actually a dialogue session by the CLCs, which is the collaborative learning communities of HELTASA. Nicola, if you can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So yeah, and I think a lot has been said in the chat. I mean, that your talk was so powerful and moved us all this morning. And a lot of us are thinking about mobilizing for action, for mobilizing for change. And perhaps this could be the opportunity where we can draw on our collective thinking and try and come up by the end of this session with some really strong, and I think the idea would be real ideas for change going forward. And with that, I'd like to introduce the collaborative learning communities of HELTASA. This is moved or transitioned from what was the special interest groups of HELTASA. We realized that we wanted to be more collaborative. We wanted to be more engaging across the different areas of focus. And as a result, the CLCs were birthed at the conference last year, actually, with the breakfast dialogue, a very interactive, vibrant session that we had with numerous of the delegates there. And we want to take that conversation forward now, but also in keeping with the profound talk we had this morning, to really think about real activities that could move us to serious change that we hope to see in the future in higher education. And with that, with the UCD-P project, there were 3 areas identified, and last year at the breakfast, some of the name changing occurred. So there was the student learning, professional learning, program development. And under each of those, we have a CLC, we have a few CLCs. Under student learning currently, the first year experience, the foundation, as well as the tutoring, mentoring, and SI CLC. Please take note that the tutoring, mentoring, and SI will be announcing their book launch, which is under the CLC as well as HELTASA. It'll be in the John Dubé room at 3:45. Please join us for that. It's an exciting moment to have our first book out through the CLC. Then we have the professional learning, where there's the professional development CLC, as well as the subtle CLC. And under program development, we currently only have the technology enhanced learning CLC, but obviously there's opportunity for more to come under these areas as well. And perhaps what happens at the end of the session, this mobilizing for change, could be where we find new groups or communities wanting to be structured under these areas, so that we can start talking and dialoguing about the real change that we'd like to see. And so for today's session, it's going to be about the year that was, offering us a moment to, I think, take a sigh, that breath, that deep breath as well, even after the last talk, but then to move back into a moment after that, certain reflections, and to be able to come up with ideas for us to move forward in the year and years to come. And with that, I'd move over to Nicola from the Technology Enhanced Learning CLC.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nicola. And I co-convene the Technology Enhanced Learning CLC with Alana Riley. And we thought we'd just kick off, with the introduction and ask you all to please share 3 words that describe the year that was for you in the chat. So please have a think and share 3 words that describe your year. Was it exciting? Was it horrific? What words describe your experience of the year that was? Okay, challenging, difficult, frightening, chaos, uncertain, conflicting, challenging. Breakthrough. Alana, please chime in. I think we're noticing a lot of diversity here. Exhausting. Growth, roller coaster. Yeah, and I think we all have such different perspectives and experiences that shape how we've, experienced the year that was. I think what's interesting is that a lot of people are mentioning a positive word and then also something that's sort of less positive. Oops, sorry. Transformative, emotionally testing. Yes, it's been a very emotional time. I think we can't ignore that it's a pandemic and we've lost a lot of friends, family members, students, colleagues. It's been I think a time of loss. But also a time of resilience and innovation. I'm seeing many colleagues mentioning reinvention, transformative growth. Yeah, and it's that balancing. I see trauma, traumatic, emotional. And these are interesting dynamics. Can we please upgrade or co-host Alana? She can't seem to unmute herself. Yes, great idea, Greg. Greg says we should create a word cloud from all of these. Alana, have you got your mic?
Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Great, thanks. Yes, I think that there does seem to be quite a bit of, we definitely see the positives and the negatives coming through.
Yeah, and I think at this time we've also learned, even though we're the Technology Enhanced Learning CLC, we've seen how important the emotional aspect is and the need for human connection online, even though we're all working remotely. I think that's been our interesting challenge this year.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the need for the human touch and the humanizing and the affective has come through extremely strongly throughout this conference and also just throughout the year.
Yeah, would anyone like to share in voice? Please let us know in the chat. I think there's also, amidst this, many of us had to learn new things, unlearn, you know, and it wasn't just all the technical stuff around new technologies or technologies that we had, but needed to use differently. Yeah, so Najma, yes, indeed, where the focus lies depends on a host of things. And Langutani says this year taught us that life can be lived differently. I think we can all agree with that. And Danny's point about the importance of self-care amidst all the work that needed doing. I'm especially thinking of, you know, people supporting students or colleagues or even other staff, how that can be quite, you know, I think very intensified and overwhelming this year. And everyone's been so resilient, but it hasn't, you know, it's been a difficult time.
I think if I just want to look at Rita's comments, a few comments.
Yes, so please, folks, if anyone wants to take the mic. So I like this one. Obosi says it gives us opportunity to see and hear all our students. Really? All your students?
Function in an emergency environment, one that's not sustainable, but is given so many opportunities going forward.
Yeah, please, would someone like to share their voice? How was the year that was for you? Please type M into the chat if you want to take the mic, and the facilitators can upgrade you, and you can unmute yourself. And you're just sharing the year that was. Great. Oboshi, let's, can we give you the mic? I see you said M. Okay. Once you, yeah, just say hi when you've got your mic. And Danny, Oboshi, is that you? Okay, facilitators, please upgrade Oboshi and Danny so that they can use their microphones. Okay. So Lana, maybe you can upgrade people. Just checking if you and I are able to do that. Danny, can you try your mic?
Yeah, it's working, Nicola.
Oh, awesome. So what was the year that was like? What was it like for you?
Right. So I was actually just starting to type it, but never mind. I'll start again. So one of the three keywords that I put initially was sobering. And one of the things that I think that collectively for us in higher education, what has happened this year, and I can certainly speak to this from my own experience at the University of Cape Town, is that things that we've wavered about or been unsure about or second guessed, we've actually discovered that we can do very quickly when a true need or crisis, if you will, arises. And just to give you some, really simple examples of this, like various HR processes, which we've always been told could not be done online, are now suddenly available and working very well. various things with regards to student learning. How could we do tutorials online? How could we facilitate that? We've been able to do that. And yes, there've been bumps along the way, but on the whole, things that we thought we couldn't do, we've actually now been able to do. And yes, it was a challenging year. There were difficulties, but I think a lot of good has come out of it as well. And it can only take, in my opinion, higher education forward.
Thank you, Danny.
Hello, this is Oboshi.
Hey, Oboshi.
Yeah, hello. Thank you very much. I also looked at the fact that this pandemic has really given us opportunity to really see and hear our students. I have about between 70 to 150 students in my school, University of Ghana School of Nursing. But because of using WhatsApp and other things, most of the students who hitherto wouldn't talk at all in class were able to give their submissions, and very sensible ones that made us really supported them. Those who had challenges who call me and interact with me. We also were using the Sakai, so you could leave forums for them to share their views and the things. It's been challenging, I can see, because I have children that I have to also monitor because they were also learning online. But it also gave me the opportunity to learn so many things. So I think it has been helpful, notwithstanding the challenges. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Oboshi. Wow. So I think you're highlighting something that we're going to be talking about in this session, which is, some of the benefits as well as the challenges. So I think at this point, thank you for sharing your voices, Oboshi, Annie, and I'm going to hand over to Artie.
Hi everyone, it's Rosaline. Yeah. Can you stop sharing your screen, then I'll share mine. Good day everyone, I'm Rosaline Gabender and I'm the convener of the PD, the Professional Development CLC. I will be co-facilitating this short slot with Artie Ramraj from MUT and Danny Fontaine from UCT. So our reflection for today is on how COVID-19 has impacted higher education. So when I think about this year, the quote by Charles Dickens comes to mind, and I'm just going to quote a part of it. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. So we are looking at how it's impacted on higher education. How has COVID-19 impacted on higher education? And we're looking at it from three levels. We're looking at it from the macro level. At a national level, we've seen the impact, and we'd like to hear from you as well as we reflect in the next 10 to 12 minutes. At a meso level, at the institutional level, how has it impacted on the practices and what has happened at the institutional level? And finally, at the micro level, with the self, how has it impacted you, your practice in academic development as a lecturer, as a manager, as a leader, whatever it is you do? So we will be sharing a link to a Google document as well in the chat. So if you go to the chat, Arthi, please share the link in the chat. So you can go to the chat and click on the link and start typing in your comments there. This will be a shared document, and we're interested in what you're thinking. You can write about a comment on each of these levels, and we're also opening up the floor. So we'd like to listen to your comments as well. You can type in the chat. You can even if you want the mic to speak, please type M and we will give you the mic to speak as well. So Arthi, please share the link. Yeah, okay, so the link is there. So please click on the link and start typing in your comments. Is there anyone that'd like to start? So we're doing two things. You can write you can chat, you can ask for the mic and share your comments. And Aarti will be recording those comments as well. So who would like to be the first? I can't see anyone with M. Okay. Danny, any ideas coming through on the Google Doc?
Can you see the document on the screen?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Great.
Yes, I'm keeping an eye, Rosaline. I'm just letting it get populated a little bit more.
Yes. So we'd also like you to share. Maybe there's some people that like to speak. It's like our students. Some like to write, some like to speak. So you can, please, we can share as well. Right, you can unmute your mic and speak. I don't see any hands or anyone wanting to speak. Anyone? I'm interested in what has happened at the national level, at institutional level, at the self level. What has happened for you?
Somebody writes for the national level, no chance to avoid technology. Very true. Everyone has had to come on board.
Yes.
Lecturers have been able to learn and do things that they couldn't before. And that's very true. I mean, I think everybody's had to be pushed out of their comfort zone and engage with things that they might thought they would never have engaged with before.
Yes, and I think, and I agree with this comment that it says it's brought the inequities to the fore, because the challenges of data, devices, connectivity, you know, and I asked a question earlier, how do we connect with the disconnected? And there's various reasons for the disconnection of staff and students, and remote learning has brought all of these to the fore. Aarti, is it possible to scroll down to the self? I'm also interested in seeing what are people saying about how it impacted on the self. We've got 5 minutes, we're keeping to time. In terms of practice. Yes, and I listened to one of the presentations yesterday of I think it was Rita's group, in terms of the, you know, writing down the narratives and working together and supporting each other, which was good because we saw lots of collaboration happening across institutions during COVID. So it can be at a national level, this was happening across institutions, but how did it help you? Because I think for some of us, we were feeling alienated in our own spaces, and then we could reach out to someone else that was doing the same type of work that we were doing and supporting each other, which was great. Danny?
A lot of people are also noting their own ability to realize their creativity, develop skills that they didn't have before, or they did have, but they've now developed them further. So, you know, obviously with each of these categories, as we've highlighted and asked people to share with us, there are, you know, losses, but there are also a lot of gains that are coming out of this moment that the pandemic has provided.
Yeah, so someone said, in terms of the losses, in terms of the self, I think the first comment there is my sanity. And I know that lots of us went through this, especially at the beginning, where we were confronted with all of these things and we had to deal with these issues. And for me, I know it was lots and lots of learning. I learned so much during this year. And that's true, my self-censure mechanisms, I realized to step up and take control of the situation. So it can be a gain as well.
Yeah, it was actually me, Danny, who wrote that comment, my sanity. Because in the beginning, I remember feeling a lot like I had whiplash, because you'd be told one thing one day and the next day everything had changed. And I know a lot of people shared that sentiment and that feeling. And so we were caught up in a space that was very, very quickly changing under our feet. And a lot of people have alluded to that across all three of these levels: national, the self, and institutional.
And Arthi, could you move up to national level? Maybe we'd like to see what was happening across at a national level as well.
Or
Yes.
institutional, I think, Rosaline. We started with national.
Okay,
If
okay,
you want
let's
to
go
look
to
at-
institutional, Arthi. Sorry, Arthi.
Yeah, quicker, more widespread
Yes.
rollout of technologies. We have alluded to that already.
Yes.
More empathy and caring from lecturers. I've heard that from a lot of people. I've heard that from a lot of students. Lecturers were more connected with their students. More
Yeah, and
innovations in
yes.
teaching and learning. I think a lot of people have found that they could be innovative in ways that they hadn't yet ever fully thought through or thought about. And so disruptive innovation, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Hayden Christensen's work, it's very much been a time of disruptive innovation for us. This disruption has caused many of us in very good ways to be very, very innovative in meaningful ways.
Yeah, and it's true that there was lots more lecturer support, support for lecturers across at a national level. We saw it. The CLCs were instrumental in that as well. We saw it at institutional level. So Alfred says students' dependence on lecturers for content is now glaring as most fail to study on their own. Plagiarism has been their fallback position. So yeah, so I think that was one of the issues that has come up as well in terms of proctoring and assessments and things like that. Nationally, Nicholas says too much focus on data and devices.
If I may just highlight something at the institutional level, somebody writes here, more productivity and happier staff because they worked from home. And that's very interesting.
Yes.
You know, there's some people who've really, they found their groove because they can work from home. And I know some people for whom this is not working for them. But I think it also begs and raises a bigger question is, what does this mean for higher education and how it will look in terms of where people work post the COVID pandemic? Because some interesting questions need to be asked and things need to be thought through.
Okay, so we've just got a minute left. So what we'd like to encourage you, we'll keep the link open. So please continue. You can share, you can do it later when you have time during the break. We'd like to, this is important data as well. We'd like to see what was happening at these different levels. And Danny, you can round up.
Thanks, Rosaline. Colleagues, thank you all very much for your contributions. As Rosaline says, the link will stay up and you can feel free to continue to contribute. But I think by way of concluding and handing over, I just want to highlight that as we've already engaged with through various sessions at the conference already, we find ourselves in a very interesting space, one that affords both a lot of positives, but one that has obviously thrown up quite a number of challenges as well. And I think it's, it behooves each and every one of us to engage with that where we find ourselves and make contributions in ways that is going to take higher education, both nationally, institutionally, and for yourself forward. So I think I'll leave it there. You can see what all the comments are in the spreadsheet. And I'm going to hand over now to Sue and her team to continue this journey with us.
Danny, Nicola, if you could please just share the screen, that would be appreciated, please, with the slides.
I'm gonna share something before we start.
Okay.
I think this is a good place to start, Nelia.
Thank you, Sue. As mentioned earlier, Rita did mention that we are very excited. We have a publication that is in the final stages, and it's a publication that is funded by UCG funds as well as through the HELTASA CLC. So we are very proud to launch this. We will obviously be having a poster session later today at 15:45. So I urge you to please join us. And this is really in keeping with what Prof. Maruwala said yesterday as part of his keynote speech, where he said, you know, we need to learn through experience and through sharing with other institutions. And I think this really encapsulates what we've tried to achieve here by having a collaboration with 9 institutions. So please, I urge you to come and listen to us, and where we will do a poster presentation and give you a better sense of what this guide is about, what the aims are, the objectives, and how we hope you will gain from obviously being part of that session. So thank you for that. Thank you, Sue. Nicola, if you can go back to the original slides, please, I would appreciate that. Thank you. So I'll just start off by introducing myself. My name is Nelia Freyd. I'm the co-convener for tutoring, mentoring, and SI. And myself and Sue, who is the convener, will actually be presenting today. Nicola, you can go to the next slide, please. I think we've heard a lot of conversation around this year and what 2020 has brought. And I think we can all agree that the COVID pandemic has forcefully transformed the higher education landscape. We know that the Minister of Higher Education implored us at the start of this to ensure that no student was left behind in an endeavor to complete the 2020 academic year. In an endeavor to meet this directive, institutions of higher education scrambled to move to ERT with the aim of transforming learning spaces in order to effectively engage students. In this process, we became painfully aware of the challenges that our students and we ourselves faced in implementing and accessing ERT. And we are very aware of these challenges, and some of them included connectivity issues, no access to devices, the high cost of data, no access to printing facilities, and the list goes on. The reality is that many of our institutions try to address these challenges in progressive ways by, for example, providing data to students, devices, and working to zero rate some of the learning management systems that students had to access. Through the process of teaching, we have also had to remain vigilant of the psychosocial needs of our students and our colleagues. We've had to use the online engagement to show care, to communicate, and to connect with our students and colleagues, or at least try. If we reflect on this year and we use it to guide how we move forward, and I'm echoing Associate Professor Bahari Leek's sentiments, our biggest challenge is to ensure that the enabling learning spaces that we create for our students are not at the expense of teaching and learning pedagogy. I came across a picture with the following caption: 2020, a new history has been written. Let's use this new history that has resulted in crisis and disruption to create a new reality for our students and ourselves as academics and academic developers. I want to now hand over to Sue, who is going to take us through a process where we can start to map out this new reality. Nicola, you can move to the next slide, and Sue, I hand over to you.
Okay, thanks, Nelia. Good morning, colleagues. I want to first say, I hope you join us at 4:15. We're really, really excited about this book. It's the first time with HELTASA, and also collaborating with so many other institutions as well. And you'll be very excited to read the different case studies, and also provides you with theories on how to take forward student support. So I think that's enough with the commercial break. Get back to today's session. I want to thank you all for joining us in this session. And as Nelia has highlighted, 2020 was actually not a year that disabled us. It was, like Professor Bihari Leek mentioned in her welcome address, the pandemic actually enabled us to learn. And this is what the session is going to be about. Academic developers and lecturers have been so busy trying to save the academic year, and in a rushed manner moved learning and teaching online. So now we are asking you to step back to pause for a moment and reflect on your experiences as you moved teaching and learning online. I think this model that we have actually shows you the different experiences that academic staff went through. We would like to highlight the model of the 3T zone model of learning during the time of disruption in higher education. The zones that emerged during this time was a zone of trauma, a zone of transition, and a zone of transformation. And within these zones, there was learning, unlearning, and relearning processes and adaptation experiences of academics as they tried to move teaching and learning online. These zones provide indicators of what academics experienced as they went through phases of learning, unlearning, and relearning, providing an awake stance on one's lived experiences. However, the extent of the spread of COVID-19 remained unknown, which made it exceptionally difficult for universities to plan ahead. So the zone of trauma was brought about by the uncertainties, which caused a great deal of fear and anxiety amongst academic staff. This fear and panic resonated in two levels, a personal level and a professional level. On the personal level, the concerns were for academic staff's individual own health, their safety, their well-being, and that of their families. On the professional level, academics were forced out of familiar spaces and places on campus, creating a sense of displacement and disposition. We were learning from local and international higher education institutions as we tried to engage with emergency remote teaching and learning. In the zone of transition, there was a shift in academic identities as academic staff needed to unlearn familiar ways of being and doing. The familiarity of classroom spaces and the formal structures which contained programs was now no longer available to staff and students. Also, resources available on campus was also no longer available to staff. In this zone, academic staff began to explore new ways of being and doing to adapt to the new normal. This led to an increase in sharing of knowledge and practices across disciplines, leading to new networks on local, national, and international levels. In the transformation zone, staff started to relearn new ways of doing. A pattern of resilience and commitment by academic staff developed. The pandemic also highlighted academics' need to teach with care and compassion, which strangely created a sense of connectedness with students, which was not actually observable during face-to-face teaching. The learning and teaching approaches were carefully considered to ensure that no student was left behind. What emerged from the zone was a sense of agency to enable us to thrive. So I think in today's session, what we would like to hear from you is your reflections, your experiences. We're hoping that you would share with us your learnings, unlearnings, and relearnings. So I'm going to hand over to Nelia to explain the activity that we'd like all of you to take part in. Nelia?
Thank you, Sue. Nicola, could you move to the next slide, please? Thank you. Okay, so as Sue has mentioned, we would really like to have a look or to get a sense of what you've experienced. We've already seen you've put 3 words down in terms of what you've experienced or how you've experienced this year. You've written in the Google document in terms of the gains and losses. And so now we'd really like to get a sense of what your experiences were during this time of crises. And you will see that Sue is going to post a link in the chat where you will actually be able to write down what these experiences are. You will see that you will be taken to a Padlet section, and what will happen there is that you will have an opportunity to write in 3 sections. The first one is what you have learned, and that's the green sticky note. The second one is what did you have to unlearn? And that will be the pink sticky notes. And the third one is then the what did you have to relearn, or what did you relearn? And that will be the yellow sticky note. So we'll ask you to please click on the link that Sue has shared in the chat, and then to please start populating those 3 sticky notes so that we can get a better sense of what you've learned, had to unlearn, and had to relearn. And I think it's a good opportunity for us to reflect. So please, if you can click on the chat or go to the chat and click on the link so that we can start this activity. We're going to give you 2 minutes to please complete this activity, and then we will have a look and see what themes have emerged. So please, if you can click on the chat.
Nicola, I'd like to share my screen now. Thank you. Okay, we have one that has went in already. Okay, great. You can click on the link in the chat and just type in any of those sticky notes. Nelia, are you keeping time?
I am not, but I will start keeping time.
Yeah, okay, I think this is great. I think we can start with that and just leave it open, and people can continue typing in stuff. What was very interesting is the first one, what have you learned during this crisis? And although we spoke about the 3 zones, there was no set where one zone finishes and the other zone starts. I mean, it kind of links in and goes back and forth as well. So, you know, there's no defining ending and beginning of each zone. So it's interesting that there was a lot of learning that took place. And as Kasturi mentioned in her welcome address, you know, that's what it enabled us to do. It enabled learning. And if we look at that, you know, they speak about resilience is real. Humans are very resilient, and that's what we notice. Being thrown into the deep end and create opportunities to grow. Because if we were asked to go online during a normal situation, you know, many of us would have resisted. But here, actually, I mean, when we look back, we can't believe that we're actually teaching online and so creative and came up with so many different ways to engage with our students. We can't believe we have grown so much. So I think that's interesting. Patience as well. Due to uncertainty, we had to be patient. Innovations in teaching and learning. It is possible to teach online despite common identified challenges. So true. to have more compassion with students, spirit of generosity. I think for the first time, we were working across silos, sharing information, working with other academic staff, working with other units as well to ensure that we do finish this academic year and support our students. Change is normal, so true. But we can change higher education, something that we were waiting for such a long time. Yes, human connection is key. I miss my colleagues. Yeah, that's the sad part. I think our students also miss us. Resilience is key in spite of all challenges. Online teaching need human touch for students. Yep, that's true. Learning can take place on any platform. Empathy, it is hard to balance work and family life when you are at home, no boundaries. Yes, that's true. There was no office hours. We worked all hours, and especially when students went online from 11 o'clock at night, academic staff had to be available to answer those questions. It is possible to engage effectively with students online. Difficult to apply principles of theories such as inquiry-based learning, meta-learning, constructivism, etc. I thought I was a techno idiot, but it is amazing how quickly I learned when I had to. Yes, people can adapt to change. Kids of e-learning support people make the worst e-learners. Okay.
Okay, Sue, I think our time is up.
Okay. Can you quickly maybe go to, let's look at what did we unlearn?
Yeah, well, let me sum up by just saying the three things that stand out for me in terms of the common theme. And if we look at what's learned, I think the human component stands out very, very clearly. And that's the resilience, that's the adapting, and it's possible to do that. So that's important. In terms of the unlearning is that, and again, that's the myth. Our keynote speaker spoke about lies and myths that are part of higher education. And I think that idea of that notion of traditional teaching is the only way. I think we've dispelled that myth very, very clearly. And then I think the last in terms of relearning is that we've had to learn different ways of teaching, different ways of assessing. We've had to look at boundaries, and we've had to make sure that the technology is fit for purpose, for want of a better way of saying it. So I think that kind of wraps up what people are have kind of commented, and those are the main themes. So we're going to end our session here. Nicola, if you can take us back to the slides, and then I will hand over to Francois and Anthea to continue with their session. Thank you, Nicola.
Thank you. Thanks, colleagues.
Okay, Nicola, are we online?
Yep. Can you see your slides?
Okay, good morning, colleagues. I think in terms of our time available, we will try to deal with this as fast as possible. You know that in terms of what we have experienced at our own institutions and became aware of during our interactions with other higher education institutions, and also have heard invaluable presentations so far, and what you've experienced in this session so far, we should ask the question, how important is willingness to change measured against the good practices, successful interventions, and research outcomes in this regard? Please, the next slide, Nicola, if you don't. Nicola, can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. Colleagues, there you just see some comments, but So much valuable contributions have been made. If we just listen or think about this morning's keynote address, about the real situation that we're facing at the moment, our student population, and then the big issue about resistance in terms of willingness to change. We really have to ask the question, can we afford to resist even changes at management and implementation level? I would like you to comment maybe on the chat box how you feel about willingness to change. We know in the past that there are wonderful people who are always willing to change, but there are always people who always keep on resisting. Can we afford it? And before maybe we think about this further, I would like to request Anthea to elaborate and emphasize what is mentioned by willingness to change. Anthea will highlight some lessons for the future that cannot be ignored to strengthen your thinking in terms of the importance of willingness. Thank you. Over to Anthea then.
Thank you very much, Francois, and good morning from my side as well, colleagues. I trust that you can all hear me loud and clear. Nicola, if you could move on to the next slide, please. There we go. Thank you. Now, colleagues, I'm sure that you have heard about several different success stories and lessons learned with regard to emergency, remote teaching, learning, and assessment throughout your attendance of the conference sessions thus far. But allow me to also briefly highlight a few lessons for the future as listed on the slide. And I will really, in the interest of time, just touch on these briefly. Just to mention that these are little snippets from the results of a survey at my own institution, which is the University of Stellenbosch. Firstly, with regard to point number 1, diversity and different circumstances, COVID-19 is a powerful reminder that our students' circumstances for successful learning vastly differ, and this is something that we really need to keep in mind. Secondly, it seems that hybrid learning is learning for the future, with settled knowledge online, in higher learning in class. And the key question to ask here is, what are the national higher education and different institutional imperatives with regard to hybrid learning? And what are the expected benefits and the challenges? And I think that is some food for thought for all of us. Thirdly, working online to produce a good teaching and learning experience takes more energy, it takes more time, and it takes more effort from both lecturers and students. And for future planning, one would need to take this into account. Moving on to the next block. Both lecturers and support staff learned a lot about learning material design and the pedagogy of online learning. And this is indeed proof that we can get the best of both worlds. So for me, moving forward, let us build on this, because we have proven to ourselves that this is indeed possible and this can be done. On the 5th point, online checking in by lecturers was found to be a huge source of encouragement to students. And I'm sure that many of you have had the very same experience at your institutions. We should try and do our best to continue doing this in the so-called new normal. Moving on to point number 6, many institutional support systems had to migrate to the online learning space, which has turned into a useful and more accessible first port of call for help for both lecturers and students. I think the previous speaker mentioned this when she said that all of a sudden some some possibilities are there in the online space with regards to, for example, human resource systems. With regards to cooperative learning, this was boosted because of the competencies developed in the use of virtual interactive forums. And lastly, we should bear in mind that students enroll at universities not only for learning or for online learning, but also for the holistic educational experience, including personal development through social interaction. So colleagues, maintaining on and building on these lessons are, of course, easier said than done. To ensure sound teaching and learning pedagogy, the question is, how do we navigate the tension between the demands to make this work, the demands of delivering a high quality curriculum, and maintaining scholarship in teaching and learning? I think we need to pay careful consideration to a change in the way we regard the scholarship of teaching and learning. And on that note, I'm going to hand back to Francois.
Nicola, can we have the last slide, please? Thank you so much. Colleagues, in terms of what was said and what we've experienced, we kindly request you to write an email or even put your perspectives on the website so that we can follow up on issues that we might be able to assist you. But in terms of how can the CLCs collaborate or take ideas forward in the year and years to come, even as individual CLCs or in a collaborative way, as you have experienced this morning. It is important that we cooperate at a national level or interinstitutional level, that we cooperate in regions to take this forward. So please indicate to us how you see the role of the collaborative learning communities to assist you in this regard. That's all from our side. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, colleagues. This session has really generated a wealth of knowledge, which is actually very great. And that is what we envisioned when we planned this project. And our colleagues in the CLCs have also modeled useful pedagogies for online and emergency remote teaching. And they've showed us how we can use tools such as Padlet, Google Docs, and also the chat function, which is actually very great. But now we sit with a question. How do we take what we have learned, unlearned, and also relearned? How do we take that forward in 2021? And this is where we need your input. Because from HELTASA's side, we envisage that this cannot occur, this approach, any approach to take this forward in a way that will make sense and will be sustainable, means that these initiatives cannot occur in silos. And as Francois have said already, we will look at 3 different levels. We will look at the national level, a regional level, and also at the institutional level. So when we look at the national level, here we look at input from colleagues from Southern Africa, the Southern Africa region, and also nationally. And we've also heard that we even had colleagues attending this conference from as far as United Kingdom and in other areas as well. So we welcome all input. Colleagues, what should happen at a regional level? Here we have some examples of what this could look like. So these are potential collaborations between institutions within a particular region. But you are most welcome to also form your own collaborations, because these are ideas that we put forward. And then obviously we want your input. So what needs to be done at an institutional level? So at an institutional level, we encourage you to think about who at my institution needs to be welcomed to HELTASA if they are not already part of HELTASA. In other words, we are boosting membership. but not just for the sake of boosting membership, but for the sake of taking the academic project that was clarified to us, that was emphasized through the many powerful messages we've had thus far in the conference and from our keynote speakers, also from our various presentations, to take that academic project forward. It means that I need to look at my institution. We need to, all of us need to look at our institutions, look critically and see who are my colleagues, who are the champions who can take these initiatives forward. But not just the champions, the people who are vocal. Also, who are the quiet ones, the ones who need prompting and some support to get on board in order for us to boost our institutional activities and then take it further to the regional level and also to the national level. And then just a reminder also, and this was mentioned throughout the session already, about an excellent example of regional collaboration, which is the Tutor, Mentor and Supplemental Instruction CLC's book launch. So I'm reminding you again to just please attend the session at 15:45, that's 3:45 this afternoon in June, Dubai, room 1. So colleagues, these are the kinds of collaborations that are possible if we work across institutions and we forget about the silo mentality that we've had in the past. Then also, colleagues, if you have any questions, please contact us. Our contact details are on the HELTASA website. The CLC web pages were under construction, so there are quite a few omissions still, but please contact us and let us know how we can do this together, institutionally, regionally, and also nationally. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, the CLC team. For the sake of time, I'll just make some few announcements.